The Federal Drug Enforcement Administration says a week-long cartel crackdown led to nearly 200 arrests just in New England. The DEA says they were all members of the Sinaloa cartel, the largest drug cartel in the world.
An early morning raid on a Chicago apartment building Tuesday has local leaders vowing they'll continue to fight back against the Trump administration.
And moments ago, President Trump weighed in again and is trying to ratchet things up rather than calm things down.
The drive had been encrypted with a 4,096-bit military-grade cipher. It took 41 hours to crack. When the file finally opened, an FBI analyst in a Quantico server room stared at the screen and said nothing for 11 full seconds. It was a photograph, a dinner table, crystal glasses, white tablecloths, 7 people, laughing, and at the center of the frame, the Honorable Isabella Martinez, Senior United States District Judge for the Northern District of Illinois, raising a glass with a man whose face appeared on 3 federal indictments and 2 Interpol red notices. This photograph ended a 22-month investigation. Here's how it started.
The President of the United States falsely claims that Chicago is crime-ridden. It is not crime-ridden. We are not in the top 25 or 30 cities in the country, big cities in the country.
11:42 p.m. Chicago, Illinois. The Chicago Financial Crime Syndicate had moved $18.4 billion through the American legal system. Not past it, through it. Using it as a weapon. 31 federal judges had dismissed cases tied to this network over a 6-year period. 47 witness protection referrals were leaked before witnesses could testify. 14 grand jury proceedings collapsed without explanation. None of it looked like coincidence. All of it looked like policy. And tonight, the policy was about to meet a warrant. But before the first door was breached, investigators were sitting on 5 questions with no answers. Who was the silent financial architect behind the shell company chain that made $18.4 billion vanish in plain sight? Why did Operation Iron Gavel's predecessor, a 2021 federal probe, die quietly on a duty judge's desk the same week that judge purchased a $1 million home in cash? What was inside the safety deposit box at a private Loop District bank, registered under a name that matched no living person in any federal database? And who sent an encrypted message to the syndicate's financial controller at 3:49 a.m., 11 minutes before Mission Command was even briefed on the raid schedule? 147 suspects, 62 simultaneous raid locations, and somewhere inside the machine, a secret that would make every arrest in this story feel like a prologue. What they found in the first 10 minutes? Keep watching. 4:02 a.m. FBI breach teams hit 8 locations simultaneously across Chicago's downtown and near North Side. Flashbangs detonated in the lobbies of 3 financial consulting offices inside glass towers along Michigan Avenue. SWAT teams moved through emergency stairwells like a single organism, boots silent, weapons up, floor by floor. DIA tactical units hit a members-only private casino on the near North Side. On the surface, it was a legitimate entertainment establishment. In reality, it was running nightly cash receipts between $400,000 and $800,000. Every dollar routed through 6 shell companies before it touched a traceable account. ICE strike teams simultaneously descended on 4 quiet residential addresses in Evanston and Oak Park. Suburban, ordinary, the kind of neighborhood where nobody asks questions. The occupants were forensic accountants, managing offshore accounts across the Cayman Islands, Cyprus, and Malta on behalf of the syndicate. From bedrooms that looked like home offices. Within 9 minutes, 12 suspects were in handcuffs. Within 20, FBI agents located the primary server room hidden beneath the private casino, behind a false wall inside a private dining room, containing 41 encrypted hard drives and a fireproof cabinet holding physical ledgers dating back to 2017. But one seizure stood out from everything else. Inside a duffel bag in the casino's private vault, not narcotics, not cash. A binder. Laminated. Color-coded. Containing the names, badge numbers, home addresses, and scheduled court dates of 43 federal prosecutors currently active in the Northern District of Illinois. Not a hit list. Something more precise than that. These prosecutors weren't targets. They were tracked variables. Updated monthly. cross-referenced against case assignments, flagged whenever they were drawn on cases with syndicate connections. For 6 years, someone inside the federal judiciary had been running quality control on the prosecution of organized crime in Chicago. But what was on those hard drives? That's the moment the investigation stopped being an operation and became a reckoning. If you think that's big, the next discovery will shake you. Stay with me. 10 hours later. FBI Cyber Command. Quantico, Virginia. Operation Iron Gavel's digital forensics team had cracked 3 of the 41 drives by 2 p.m. What appeared on their screens wasn't just a financial network. It was an architecture. Shell company chains stretching from Chicago to New York to Washington, D.C., then offshore. Cayman Islands, Malta, the British Virgin Islands. 42 layers of corporate ownership, each entity registered in a different jurisdiction, each one structured to automatically dissolve if subpoenaed beyond the 3rd layer. The money moved like water, through private casino receipts, through a chain of Chicago fine dining restaurants operating at a loss for 8 consecutive years without a single investor concern, through a construction holding company that had received $240 million in city development contracts, over 5 years without completing one project on schedule. And at the top of every single financial tree, one name, a trust. The Meridian Civic Foundation. Tax exempt. Publicly registered since 2016. Filing clean charity reports with the ears. Donating to children's literacy programs. Hosting benefit dinners with Chicago's civic elite. With a board of directors that included, and this is the moment 2 analysts in Quantico looked at each other without speaking, the Honorable Isabella Martinez, U.S. District Judge for the Northern District of Illinois. A veteran agent with 22 years in federal financial crimes leaned back in his chair and said, quietly, "I've seen corruption. I've never seen curated corruption." His hands were steady. His voice wasn't. One open loop closes here. The safety deposit box registered under a ghost identity? It held bearer bonds with a combined face value of $214 million. But Judge Martinez wasn't the entire structure. The network had a silent partner. Someone with access that a judge, no matter how powerful or compromised, simply cannot possess on her own. Pause for a second. Think about what kind of institutional power you'd need to protect a network worth $18.4 billion. The answer comes in 60 seconds. 5:23 a.m. Joint Task Force Command Center, Chicago Federal Building. A digital map on the main screen showed 62 red markers pulsing across Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. 1,200 federal agents, 40 SWAT teams, DIA and ICE tactical units under unified command, 3 Black Hawk helicopters sweeping Cook County airspace, an Army surveillance asset tasked to monitor border-adjacent financial courier routes. In 4 hours, the numbers were staggering. $67 million in physical cash and seized assets. 147 arrests. 11 armored vehicles. A fentanyl processing and repackaging operation on Chicago's west side. 3 million pills. Production line cleaned, seized, and destroyed. Human trafficking transit properties in Cicero and Berwyn. 19 victims recovered, all from Central America, all held under document confiscation by their handlers. A migrant smuggling network dismantled across 3 counties. 12 smugglers in custody. At 7:44 a.m., the command center went quiet. Analysts had cracked the final server. The one that had taken the longest. The one with the most layers. And what it contained didn't just change the investigation. It redefined the crime. The syndicate hadn't simply corrupted the legal system. They had written into it. Inside that server, draft legislative text. Model bill language, complete with amendment riders, sunset clause waivers, and harmless-sounding definitional adjustments that had been inserted, word for word, into 3 pieces of Illinois state financial transparency legislation passed between 2019 and 2022. On the surface, the bills expanded financial reporting requirements, responsible governance, bipartisan support, minimal press coverage. But buried deep in the fine print, in subsections nobody reads, were exemptions. Specific, narrow, surgical. Exemptions that created legal blind spots shaped precisely to protect the shell company architecture the syndicate was running. They didn't bribe their way around the law. They built the law around themselves. And the records showed which state legislators sponsored those subsections, which committee members approved them without amendment, which legal counsel drafted the rider language. This wasn't bribery anymore. This was legislative infiltration. The operation to arrest a corrupt judge had just become an investigation into the integrity of the Illinois state legislature. This next part, I need you to focus. Because this is where it gets terrifying. The seized servers revealed a secondary ledger, not a financial record. A personnel file, not for cartel soldiers, for government employees. 19 Chicago Police Department officers. 6 Cook County Sheriff's deputies. 3 sitting state court judges. 8 Illinois state legislators. All receiving monthly payments, disguised as consulting retainers from a legal services LLC registered in Delaware, routed through a payroll processor so routine it had cleared automated compliance review for 4 consecutive years, without triggering a single flag. The payments weren't massive. That was the genius of it. $3,000 a month, $5,500, $2,800. Small enough to explain, large enough to own. In exchange, patrol route adjustments that opened 40-minute windows for financial document courier movements through the loop. Court scheduling manipulations placing syndicate-connected cases before compromised judges with a 91% statistical consistency. Legislative committee assignments carefully routed to the 8 legislators on the payroll, ensuring any bill that threatened the financial blind spots in the law died in committee before reaching a floor vote. A federal deputy marshal stood in the corridor of the Chicago Federal Building at 9:15 a.m. and watched his own supervisor, a man he had worked alongside for 9 years, let out in handcuffs. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, badge on his hip. Eyes completely still. This was not corruption at the margins. This was a parallel institution. A second government. One that answered to the syndicate and used the first government as its enforcement arm. The second open loop closes here. That encrypted message sent at 3:49 a.m., 11 minutes before Mission Command was briefed on the raid schedule. Forensics traced the burner device's registration address to the Dirksen Federal Building. The courthouse. It appeared to be over. Judge Isabella Martinez was arrested at her Lincoln Park residence at 6:10 a.m. No resistance. No statement. She walked out in a gray cardigan, hands cuffed in front of her, and didn't say a single word to the 14 federal agents standing in her driveway. 147 syndicate members in custody. The Meridian Civic Foundation dissolved by emergency court order. $18. $4 billion in assets frozen across 11 jurisdictions. 3 states worth of shell company infrastructure dismantled. For 48 hours, it felt like justice had actually arrived. Then the forensic audit team filed their final report. Of the 147 individuals arrested and booked into federal custody, 146 were confirmed syndicate operatives, accountants, attorneys, corrupt officials, financial couriers. 1 was not. 1 individual, identity still classified at the time of this account, was a deep-cover FBI agent who had been embedded inside the syndicate's financial controller network for 19 months. No one on the Joint Task Force knew. The FBI's Internal Counterintelligence Division had run a parallel operation on a completely separate classification track. And now their agent was sitting in a federal holding facility, booked under a false identity, with no extraction protocol in place. Because extraction would blow the cover on 2 additional active investigations that hadn't been disclosed to anyone on the task force. The operation was a success. The aftermath was a crisis. Outside the Dirksen Federal Courthouse on the morning of Martinez's arraignment, a woman stood at the edge of the crowd. She was holding a laminated photograph of a young man, 19 years old, according to the handwritten caption at the bottom. Her son, dead 14 months ago from a fentanyl pill, traced, after the fact, to a batch that moved through the West Side repackaging operation that Iron Gavel shut down on the morning of October 8th. She didn't shout. She didn't hold a protest sign. She just stood there with his photograph, making sure someone saw it. In Illinois alone last year, 2,400 overdose deaths, 61% involving fentanyl from networks directly connected to operations like this one. 19 trafficking victims rescued. Investigators believe over 200 remain unaccounted for. This is not just a crime story. This is a blueprint. It happened here. It is operating elsewhere. And power doesn't always need violence. Sometimes it only needs a courtroom, a foundation, and legislation written just carefully enough that nobody reads the fine print. If you made it this far, you're paying attention to something most people scroll past. Tap like so this story reaches someone who needs to hear it. Drop expose in the comments if you want operations like this brought into the light. Share this with one person, just one. And Operation Iron Gavel is not finished. 3 fictional sitting U.S. senators had their names appear inside those servers, not as investigators, not as witnesses. The files are sealed pending federal grand jury review. What does it mean if those names go public? What happens to the agencies those senators oversee? That story is already being built, and it goes to places this one couldn't. Subscribe, because part 2, the political fallout, drops soon. And this time, the courtroom isn't in Chicago. It's in Washington.
बरस गुजरे यो अर्ज कर दी मेरी सुनी तू अज फरियाद अल्लाह दस दीद महबूब प्यार रेदा बर्बाद नू करी तू बेशाद सच्ची ढूंढवाना माई है खाली पे हक सच तेरा इरशाद अल्लाह होश पाक महबूब प्यार दी है दिलशानू पे जिंदाद अल्लाह मलकल मौत पे जीते जदू तीर का देर दीदार रबा होश पाक दा होवे दीदार हाज़र जदू मौत दी चाड़ से ओ मार रबा से सब दे महबूब तेरा मैनू और ना किसे दी वे लोड़ साई देवी मैन महबूब दा करा साइया देवी कुटियां वे किस्मता वे जोड़ साई सोनी अर्ज महबूब दा वास्ताई ते देवी जोड़ मस्कीन दा वे जोड़ साई होश पाक दे